Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about the animated film Justice League Dark. Okay, this is an absolutely fantastic DC animated film. It's a 5 out of 5 star movie for me. This content contains spoilers for the film Justice League Dark. All right, so I just watched Justice League Dark. I subscribe to Hulu, which I highly recommend. It's not a lot of money, and it has a lot of cool content on it. And one of the things they have right now is virtually every Justice League animated film that's ever been made. And so I've been watching through them, and I just watched Justice League Dark. So I'm going to talk a little bit about DC animated movies, and then I'll talk specifically about Justice League Dark. So the DC animated movies are interesting. They're kind of a mixed bag. So I enjoy them, but every time I watch them, or generally when I'm watching them, I always come away with this feeling of they could have done more with this. This was good, but it definitely could have been better, right? Now, I really didn't get that sense from Justice League Dark. Justice League Dark is really exceptional within the DC animated films. But overall, I'm a fan of the DC animated films. I just really feel like all of them could just go better. All of them just could be better across the board, right? But Justice League, the other thing that I wanted to say is, this is one area where DC really, really clearly defeats Marvel. So Marvel does not have any equivalent to this. They don't have a series of Marvel animated films that come out on a regular basis and have a consistent world, right? So DC is way ahead of Marvel in animated films. And I think that's kind of cool because, at the cinematic level, the Marvel Cinematic Universe versus the DC Cinematic Universe, it's not even a competition. It's really, Marvel's so far ahead. So it's kind of nice to see that DC has an area where they actually do surpass Marvel, right? Because I like them both. I have superheroes that I care deeply about on both sides, on Marvel side and on DC side. And I want DC to succeed. I don't root against them, right? But a lot of times, especially on the cinematic level, it would take a lot to rekindle my hope there. So anyway, let's talk about Justice League Dark. This is really fantastic. The reason why is this is a really tightly written story. So the story is cohesive and it's cohesive, it's concise, and it's clear, right? Like you can tell what's happening in the story. It's written, has a nice, quick, snappy pace, and everything in it is consistent, right? It's a cohesive. It binds together, and it makes sense within the DC universe. It's extremely well done. The other thing that makes this a really special movie is the Justice League Dark. So the way this opens up is essentially demons are possessing people, and the regular Justice League goes to engage this, and they utterly fail, right? And the reason why is demons are possessing normal people without those normal people even calling them in, right? Making them do evil things. And actually, I think even more than that, specifically these supernatural demons, right? And actually, that's one of the things that's really interesting. Is like these are demons from hell, not parademons. Like these are like traditional supernatural demons that they're talking about. In the beginning, these demons make it so that normal everyday people see horrible things, and then the normal people attack these horrible things that they see out of self-defense, or just seeing this abomination in front of them. Or even if they run, like they might run out into traffic, so they're either harming themselves or they're harming somebody there. By the way, I think like this is like rated R. It is definitely an animated film, but it deals with some really intense, dark themes, right? So I'm not sure, I'd have to check. It's approaching rated R content, but honestly, it doesn't have anything too racy in it, right? It's definitely not, I'll have to check, but just be warned, this is much darker than most of the DC animated films. That's what I was trying to get across. Sorry for the confusion there. All right, so basically, the Justice League tries to deal with this, with people seeing something that's not there. And really, Superman is not equipped for it. Flash is not equipped for it. Green Lantern is not equipped for it, right? And guess what? Batman is not equipped for it, but he is prepared for it, right? So he sees the problem and sees, oh, here's this supernatural problem. Our team is not, Wonder Woman isn't equipped for it as well. But Batman sees the problem. He's like, here's this problem. It's supernatural in origin. We don't have the skill set for this. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a Justice League Dark that does. Now, the Justice League Dark is actually formed at the very end of the film, right? But Batman forms a team right away. And what Batman does is he goes and he gets Zatanna and Deadman. Very, very interesting. Zatanna then goes and gets Constantine. Constantine gets Etrigan and Swamp Thing. All right. So this Justice League Dark is Batman, Deadman, Zatanna, Constantine, Etrigan, and Swamp Thing. Right. And by the way, Swamp Thing is the most far out and most disconnected. He's like very, like almost the way Ant-Man is connected in the MCU, like he's there, but he's not always there. So very similar for Swamp Thing, right? And then one of the things that the movie does is it gives you a backstory for most of these characters, right? So actually, I wouldn't say most. We get backstory content, not too much, right? We get some backstory content for Deadman. We get a little bit of backstory content for Zatanna. We get a really extensive backstory for Etrigan, which I really liked, because I really like Etrigan in the comic books. I love that he talks in riddles. Actually, he talks in rhyme. He talks in rhymes, right? I think that's awesome. It's a really cool aspect of his character. And I think it's just really neat. And also, of course, Zatanna, actually, when she does her spells, she speaks backwards. Another super cool aspect of her character. But Etrigan, they actually, in this comic, in this DC animated film, Etrigan he is specifically inside Jason Blood, which is like a medieval knight who had Etrigan put into him by Merlin. Excuse me. So very, very interesting. Etrigan's fantastic in this, and he is really, and one of the things that I thought was really, really exceptional in this was every single one of these characters, Constantine, Deadman, Etrigan, Swamp Thing, Zatanna, they are taken very, very seriously from a power perspective. They are it shows Deadman is ridiculously powerful. He has the ability to possess people. Essentially, he jumps into their body. He can then, ride around in their body the way you would ride around in a car, right? So, and basically, he can take over police officers. He can take over, somebody driving a Mack truck. He can take over a cabbie. He can take over a teacher. It's pretty incredible. His power set is really, if it's used by somebody who's thinking, and it's ridiculously powerful, right? Zatanna, she's essentially just like Doctor Strange, right? Swamp Thing is really interesting. I've never thought Swamp Thing was very powerful. He's one of the most unusual superheroes within DC, right? I also think DC's not 100% sure what to do with him, and I get that. He's a really challenging character overall, but it's interesting to have him included here. He does fit. I don't think there's nothing really spectacular done with Swamp Thing in this particular movie, but I'm glad he's included in the Justice League Dark, because I think they're going to do a good job of kind of bringing him full circle and doing some really cool things with him in the future, right? I want to say, without reservation, I absolutely am down for a Justice League Dark sequel, right? And now I also want to go on and talk a little bit more about some of the other ones. Etrigan is fantastic in this. He's very, very powerful. He has this sword. Etrigan has a sword. The sword is, considered to be like it can really be used powerfully against supernatural elements, and essentially, and that I will say this too. This was a big learning experience for me. All these characters I'm fairly unfamiliar with, except Zatanna, and I have read many books with Etrigan. I really like Etrigan a lot, but the rest of them I just really didn't. Constantine, he is considered to be essentially an occult expert in this, and he of course can cast spells. But one thing that's interesting, and I think this is persistent from what was in the comic books for Constantine. Constantine is a jerk. He's just flat out a jerk. He's selfish. He's self-absorbed. Like, he is just a jerk, right? But I think from the comic books, that's supposed to be part of his character. I struggle with really watching guys like that. Like, to me, I like superhero stories to be about people you would actually want to spend time with. And he's just nowhere. As far as he's used well in this, and I think he's here because Constantine has his fans. And if you're going to do a story about the supernatural in DC, Constantine has earned a right to be there in that story from the fan base he has. I personally don't like Constantine. I think he's kind of he's not the greatest. I just don't think he's the greatest superhero. He's not one of my favorite parts of DC. Of course, he's really from Vertigo, but I get his fan base, and they use him well in this, but they also really make it clear again that he's a jerk, right? But one of the things that's interesting is they do keep him in check enough, right? Which is interesting. The villains in this, essentially, there's this one sorcerer who John Constantine was friends with, who got kind of a magical cancer. Zatanna and Constantine go to him to find a relic that they need to get rid of whatever is allowing these demons to make normal people see terrible things, and then they harm themselves. And so they deal with this old sorcerer guy who's dying, and it turns out that this old sorcerer dude was actually dying, but actually made a deal with a set of demons in order to be spared from his sickness, right? And that through this, a 500-year-old very powerful demon actually manifests, and then the team has to fight that powerful demon, and then they do defeat him, but it takes all of them, right? And one of the things that was interesting was Swamp Thing was just wrecked, right? He was just wrecked in the fight. The rest of them come out okay. By the way, Batman is in this every step of the way, but he does nothing in this movie except bring this team together. And then he goes with them, and throughout the entire film, Batman's just standing there, like, really not useful, right? Now, that's perfectly okay, because the reality is this problem, this horrible problem needs to get managed, right? Well, how does it get managed? It gets managed by Superman bringing the right team together, which I thought was really fascinating. Essentially, Batman's superpower in this is simply recruitment, right? And that's enough, because this is Justice League Dark, right? So in this movie, Batman's there. The other thing is Batman is on the cover. He's here, and this grounds what a lot of DC fans would think as a foolish movie. And the reason why is it is challenging to mix supernatural into the comic book worlds. Both Marvel and DC have supernatural elements in their comic book world, but it is difficult to mix and match, right? So it's really, really interesting, but this movie is exceptional, right? So if you want to see this movie, your best bet is, if you have Hulu, it's right on there. You can watch it for free. If you have, if not, you can get it for Redbox really cheap. I'm pretty sure they still have it in Redbox. And then the other way that you can watch this is just, queue it up on YouTube or almost any of the streaming services for about $4 for the HD version. I really think it's worth it. It's really, really, so DC animated movies are fun. They're not all the very best. This is exceptional within the DC animated universe. It's really fantastic. I highly recommend it. Take care.